All right, it's 6:30. Welcome, everybody. I wanted to welcome everyone to the first amongst many. Got some calls coming in. The first of many in a recurring monthly wisdom talk called Truth Matters, which aims to be a platform for your own inner discovery and to serve as a springboard into the laboratory of consciousness. Our first program will be Locking Down Happiness with Devamrita Swami, who is a renowned spiritual guide in the Bhakti Yoga tradition and author of multiple books on the science of happiness, such as Searching for Vedic India and Hiding in Unnatural Happiness. As a Yale graduate and practitioner of Bhakti Yoga for over 40 years, he travels the globe sharing this timeless wisdom he's discovered. So before we jump into it, I see a couple of people that are on video. I'd encourage anyone else to also turn their video on so we can see all of your shining faces, and to stay on mute. If you have any questions, we highly, highly encourage you to send in any reflections, comments, or questions that you have. You can put them into the chat box down at the bottom, and then we will relay them to Maharaj. And then without any further ado, since we can't all say hi, we can all wave. Maybe we can all wave to Devamrita Swami, and we'll pass it over to him. Maharaj, welcome to the program.
Thank you. As you may have heard, I'm speaking from New Zealand, and I've got quite a few requests from universities around the world, as well as groups of aspiring practitioners and those who are considering, maybe I should venture down this bhakti road. I was speaking last week to a Caltech audience, and I was quite surprised by the depths of bhakti that they were contemplating. Is this a sign of the times, or how shall we take it? I'll begin with an overture that I presented to an audience in the UK. Same subject, locking down happiness. When we think in terms of BC, before COVID, our concept of happiness that we aspired for, no doubt, was very upbeat and a high-flying kite. Of course, since the global financial crisis of 2008, millennials and those coming after millennials know that the American dream is not holding up for the up-and-coming generations. Many of you have heard the joke, why do they call it the American dream? Because you have to be asleep to believe it. So here you are, coming of age. I see your faces, young and bright. But are the times young and bright? Let's consider a statement by a famous economist, Paul Romer, who said, regarding economic matters, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. So what the Bhakti yogis would like to convey at a time of global crisis is that we can individually and collectively push our life onto a higher level. This is not some kind of selfish concentration. No, this is about an endeavor for how you can be the best for yourself, and in that way, be the best for others. To the UK audience, I began with as I said, the or the BC focus in terms of the Western world, developed countries. I travel, of course, to the USA. I'm not able to come now. Europe, Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, these are all considered the pinnacle of the first world. Since 2008, especially in the USA, but elsewhere too, the prospects for those born around the turn of the century and a little before, those prospects have severely shrunk. So no more can you consider that your generation will be more prosperous than the preceding generation. That used to be a mythological given in the USA. It's not happening now. And that decline in terms of prospects for those, and I'm looking at the faces now, those in your age group, that decline started in 2008. Now, what is it? As we're in the midst of this pandemic. So just for the sake of review, let's go over the prime aspirations when the living was more easy. I have in front of me a statement very popular in the 90s. Seems like ancient history now, doesn't it? By Joseph Campbell, famous for discerning motifs throughout all the world's religions and all the world's metaphysical conceptions. He made a famous statement, follow your bliss and the universe will open doors for you where there are only walls. What do you think? Moving ahead from his statement back in the 90s into the present decade, let's recall that pre-COVID upbeat spirit, or at least the hope for the upbeat. I've jotted down some thoughts. It's about enjoying this moment. It's about waking up, feeling excited to be alive, and feeling grateful to be doing what you're doing. You're thinking, well, what's wrong with that? Yes, let me continue. You jump out of bed humming, ready to tackle the day. Remember those days? You've got some problems in your life, but you have inner drive. And you feel like there's an energy guiding your life. What's more, this sounds pretty good, doesn't it? You're living through your heart. You feel fulfilled because you feel like you're where you need to be. There's a meaning to your life. And when you're alive with that meaning and feeling that you're where you need to be, you affect everyone around you. And that's your contribution to the world. You're doing the work you love. That was a great hope. I can give some statistics to the contrary, but anyway, there's the hope. I'm doing the work I love. I'm following my passion. This all sounds so ancient history now, as we're grappling with such a global disaster. But it's good to see the panorama and then reevaluate our own position. In more optimistic times, you could say, yes, I face challenges, but that's how this game called life is played. if you've got the right mojo, the right spirit and outlook, you can start turning up the excitement, the enjoyment, and the passion in your life right now. Remember all that? You could ask yourself, what's stopping me from being happy right now? And then, of course, technology was supposed to save us time so that we can enjoy the quality moments. What do we have now? We have the curtain descending on opportunity, material opportunity. University students are graduating with massive debts. The chances of your getting employment in the field that you studied at the university is small. In fact, according to the latest statistics, a third of all university graduates will have to take a job that doesn't require a university degree. And what to speak of those who study something specifically and take a job that's not related to what they study? No longer can you look forward to making more money than your parents. In fact, so many millennials and those a bit younger, those a bit older, look forward to just staying with their parents. Thinking about all this, I thought, let's switch the focus from the USA for some moments now. Relief. Thank you, Swami. It was getting a bit tight around the collar there for a while, you know. What's he going to talk about next? Nuclear weapons and global warming? Doomsday? Okay, let's switch to something exotic. I see so many faces just laughing. All right. I did pretty good, huh? It's always good to talk about another country than the country you're dealing with. So when I'm in New Zealand, I speak about the USA. When I'm in the UK, I'll speak about New Zealand or Australia. When I'm in the USA, I've got various options, but I try to avoid too much about the USA, the land of my birth. Let's look at Bhutan. There's something exotic. There's something to perk us up a bit. A few decades ago, the tiny landlocked nation of Bhutan decided to make what's hailed as a major difference. They tossed out the traditional gross domestic product indicator and focused on what they called the gross national happiness. A country of 800,000, they've become famous in the world for embarking on this new way of ascertaining a country's well-being. They sought to enter on a developmental path that seeks to integrate sustainable and equitable socioeconomic development, along with environmental conservation, cultural promotion, and good governance. So their prime ministers insist that this gross national happiness has nothing to do with that ephemeral, fleeting stuff, moody stuff, happy today, unhappy tomorrow. They claim that their happiness that they're espousing as a national product, refers to a deep, abiding, sustainable happiness that comes from living life in full harmony with the natural world, with our communities, fellow beings, and with our cultural and spiritual heritage. In short, they summarize this as feeling totally connected with our world. And they claim to reject the economic focus so prevalent in the world, which they claim produces a profound sense of alienation from nature and from one another. They claim that cherishing self-interest and material gain destroys nature and degrades our natural and cultural heritage. So they're advocating deep social networks as a far better indicator of satisfaction and well-being instead of income and material gain. So that all sounds great. They're calling for a global effort to build a new economic system, no longer based on the dangerous illusions of irresponsible growth, a system that enhances the well-being of the planet and the harmony of people. Sustainable happiness. Let's see how they're doing. They established various indicators, key indicators that they felt were so important. Every 5 years, they send out surveyors who have a list of 300 questions to ask the people. This can take 4 or 5 hours. So you might say, well, how do people dedicate that much time to a government survey? Well, it's easy. The government pays them for the day off that they take the survey. You do it too. So the survey, which used to take 9 hours, is down to about 3. Ask them questions about how are you relating to your community, your family, how's your health, how do you feel part of society, how do you feel in your relationship with the government? Questions, many of which an American would be shocked to answer. Are you talking to your family members? Are you meditating? What would the typical American say? Hey, man, where's the bucks? Where's the deal? Where's the entertainment? When are the pro sports going to start again? So it all sounds good, doesn't it? Let me read you the 9 focuses, and you'll agree this is great, I think. Number 1, living standards. Number 2, education. Then health, environment, community vitality, time use, psychological well-being, good governance, cultural resilience, and promotion. So how are they doing in terms of this holistic happiness? How are they doing in terms of their goals? It all sounds very noble, right? And yes, if you're anticipating that I've got something to add about this, you are right. But first, let's look at the picture that developed. Because Bhutan became the darling of the alternative sustainable happiness movement as Westerners conceive of it. Happiness that doesn't exploit other people, happiness that doesn't exploit nature, it doesn't exploit the environment, and it doesn't exploit future unborn generations. All very appropriate goals. So Bhutan, for a while, became the poster child. Tourists, especially well-off tourists from all over the world, would come flying in to see this mystical, magic land of happiness. I say give them all credit for trying, although the level that they're trying on, the bhakti yogis and meditators would have some doubts about. I'll give you a hint. As Albert Einstein once said, a problem is never solved on the same level that it originated. So the bhakti yogis will apply this not simply to material affairs, but they'll use that statement to prod one another. Let's go to a higher level where the problems, the spiritual level where the problems can actually be resolved. But we'll get back to that later. For now, let's see how Bhutan is doing. It's been 40 years. According to the UN, it only ranks 94th on the list of the world's happiest countries. Norway's number one, according to the last survey of material indicators. US was number 14. But there are other signs, other indicators that are a bit troubling. It seems they've been doing a bit of ethnic cleansing. They have a minority group of Nepalese Hindus there. And the predominant culture is Buddhist, ethnic Buddhist. Please, if you're practicing any kind of Buddhism, we're not referring to your practice, but these are ethnic Buddhists in Bhutan, and Western NGOs dedicated to human rights are accusing them of a soft version of ethnic cleansing. The fact is, over a period of 7 years, 100,000 refugees from Bhutan showed up at refugee camps. You ask the Bhutan government what's going on. Oh no, it's not ethnic cleansing. We're just asking them to naturalize. We're asking them to embrace a program of naturalization. So the Nepalese Hindus, they have a different view on it. Then you look within Bhutan itself, and many of its citizens say that, hey, look, we've got rising youth unemployment, rising inequality of wealth, and we've got environmental problems because the glaciers are melting and we get our electric power from hydroelectric sources. You've got the glaciers melting. We're heading into trouble. What I'd like to focus on is the ethnic problems. In other words, Bhagavad Gita will teach you that without solving this bodyism problem, there can't be any genuine peace and happiness. Let's look at the graduate study to Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. There you see a very important cycle. It's phrased in different ways in different bhakti texts, but I'll give you one prime way this cycle is presented. It involves some Sanskrit words, which help me to remember, but I'll give you the English rendition, of course. First is tamas, then comes moha, then mahamoha, then tamishra, and andatamrisa. All right, let's get into it. Because I think hearing this will help you understand why even noble endeavors, as they're trying to do in Bhutan, don't pan out because a certain major problem is not addressed. And again, it's very appropriate that we beat up on another country, not our own. So in that way, you won't be risking feeling bent out of shape a bit. So, tamas, ignorance. Losing sight of our spiritual identity, having no understanding of what is matter, what is spirit, and what is the controller of both. From that ignorance, does bliss come? Ignorance is bliss? No. Number one, tamas, ignorance, leads to moha, false identity. I don't know anything spiritual, but I do know I'm this body, I'm this gender, I'm this ethnicity. This is based on ignorance. But things only get worse. From moha, you go to mahamoha. That means great or concentrated illusion. Not only am I this body, but I'm embedded in a whole network of bodies. Family networks, social networks, national networks, a humanity network. We are all the body. And our life is spent trafficking these networks. I'm this body, you're the body. Isn't that life? Next step after mahamoha is called tamisha. Hatefulness and envy. You see, Krishna will teach you in Bhagavad Gita that when there is material desire, there must be anger, frustration, envy, because material desires can never be fulfilled. This is a hard thing, a hard pill to swallow. I was explaining it to our audience in the UK. And I took some time, and I'll take that time with you now. I like to put it this way. Here's the way we normally think of the picture. On the one hand, there's desire existing in a realm all of its own. My desires, your desires. It's also natural, isn't it, to have desires? And because we have desires, they must be fulfilled, because isn't it cruel that the universe would allow us to have desires and no fulfillment? So on the one hand, you have desires. The Bhakti Yoga texts teach you that on the other hand, there's fulfillment, but they are like the North and South Pole. But in our illusion, in moha and mahamoha, we see those two poles collapsed as one. Desire and fulfillment is all one deal. That bit of soliloquy I read in the beginning. some notes I jotted down. You jump out of bed humming, today's the day for action, the weekend is here. Desire, some or other we've assumed, leads to fulfillment. But the Bhakti Yoga texts teach you, sorry. Although we've compressed the two into one package deal, actually they're poles apart. But we have the hope in our mind that there'll be fulfillment. And that hope is so intense that even if we get a glimmer of fulfillment, we think, yes, something is there. And if I try harder, I'll get more. So this is a big hang up to get over. And it's practically impossible without higher knowledge and a higher lifestyle. Without that, I agree. This is a trap. So why is there anger and frustration in the world? At the bottom of all the socioeconomic, political, geopolitical commotion, which has its true aspects, but we want to get to the bottom. See, we're not denying the various layers of socio-political, economic, environmental commotion. We're not denying that at all, but we want to get underneath it all. That's the point. Underneath it all is the anger and frustration from unfulfilled desires, which leads us to have our own anger and then exploit others. What to speak of exploiting ourselves? Why am I not getting what I want? Who is to blame? This goes on throughout the world at all levels. This is called Tamishra. It's hatefulness, because material desires can never be fulfilled. Now, we're not talking about when people are deprived of their basic necessities, when people are deprived of their basic need for justice, respect. We're not talking about that. We're just getting to the bottom underneath all these layers. I was explaining this point to an audience in Philadelphia a couple of weeks ago during a very intense time. And I think I was successful in pointing out that, yes, there are these layers on top, but not denying those layers, let's go deeper. Let's get down underneath it all. You see, recognizing that there's Tamishra, anger and hate, doesn't simply mean, well, you should peacefully accept your disenfranchised material position. But what it means is that even if you have everything, you still are envious and angry and hateful. For example, all the animal slaughter that goes on, bringing about zoonotic diseases like COVID-19, is a symptom of hate. How can that be? The animals can die and I shall live. They exist for my fulfillment. This is hate. And the Bhakti Yoga texts explain that the karmic reactions to such exploitation bring about commotion in human society. We can't exploit peacefully, no matter how we try or no matter how careful we are. As long as we think I'm this body, we're going to further commit ourselves to illusion. So then we look at the last stage of that quintet. Tamas, Moha, Mahamoha, Tamishra, and then Anda Tamishra. That means concentrated material madness. When you're proud of it. One body, one life, one opportunity. Go for it. Get it while you can. What's all this spiritual stuff? It's just getting in the way. One famous connoisseur of global cuisine and exotic cultures, unfortunately, he happened to commit suicide. And many journalists said he was our envy. We all wanted to live like him. Anthony, fill in the blank. We all wanted to be him. He had so much glamour and glitz in his life. And we can't believe he committed suicide. Tragedy. And what was his famous mantra? Not the Hare Krishna mantra. It was, your body is not a temple. It is an amusement park. Enjoy the ride. So this is Anda Tamishra. Just concentrated material madness to the extent that you're proud of it. So unless these five, this quintet is solved, even your endeavors for being holistic and connected on the material plane will not reach fruition. So therefore in Bhutan, they've got problems because of bodyism. In other words, the moha based on tamas, ignorance, is still there. I'll be more specific. The government made a policy, one nation, one people. Unfortunately, the policy didn't include the ethnic minorities. So they had all these refugees, people streaming out of the country. Critics are asking, hey, what happened to the Buddhist culture of compassion and mental tranquility? What's going on? And the response often was, look, we just want a tidy country with ironing out all differences, all varieties. And what happened to the higher principles of happiness? They didn't go beyond the barrier of, I am this body. So we'll go deeper now into the Bhakti Yoga science. You see, you might think, well, all right, people think they're the body, but they can still be nice people. Let's be broad-minded here. I think I'm the body, you don't think you're the body, but we can smile upon one another and love one another. But guess what? When we think we are the body, we are basing ourselves in illusion. So along with that illusion comes associates, lust, anger, greed, madness, envy, and illusion. The material mind is not alone. If you can click on this, you'll save yourself so much trouble. Being dominated by the material mind brings its gang members. And therefore, there must be upheaval, there must be commotion, just as in Bhutan. In spite of their very lofty ideals, and I like them, but because there's this flaw at the beginning of the equation, everything else becomes screwed up. So this is why the Bhakti Yoga message is so important. Let's solve the problem at the root. If we're going to unlock real happiness, we've got to get beyond this critical mistake at the very beginning. So I hope that you derive some value from this discussion of a place on the other side of the globe, an exotic little place. It's still, at least before COVID, it was a prime spot for wealthy travelers to go to. Let's experience something different, a land of meditation, a land of calmness. My brother, he's chief administrative officer for Toyota North America. He went to Bhutan a few months ago. He and his wife. Let's see the land of happiness. But again, the NGOs that deal with human rights say, wait a minute, there's some problems in paradise. There is still ethnic strife to the extent of ethnic cleansing. Youth have problems because of rising unemployment, inequality of wealth, all these Western things. Why just a Western problem? It is a worldwide problem of ignorance of the spiritual identity and thinking, I am this body. This is why Krishna begins Bhagavad Gita with this first instruction. You're different from your body. You are the non-material self. And then, of course, Bhagavad Gita takes you higher, because understanding you're not the body is just elementary school, kindergarten in terms of genuine spiritual practice. We have to proceed further. I am a non-material self, part of the supreme spiritual self. We need knowledge of that. And then knowledge of the relationship between the tiny particle and the complete whole. Getting all that and molding your lifestyle in terms of that knowledge, then we can talk about happiness, because then you'll be peaceful. And as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, how can there be happiness without peace? You have to make peace with this whole desire problem. So that leads us to the point of, what are you going to do about desire? Can you extinguish it? Can you annihilate it? Have any of you sat up on a Friday or Saturday night alone in your room thinking, I'm going to stop desiring. I'm going to put an end to all desire. Have you tried that? Yeah, there are always a few persons who try. I've seen some heads nodding. How long did it last? Right. It's like telling a little naughty kid, stay in the corner. How long can a little kid stay in a corner for? So you can just imagine. I like to give this example. Friday night comes around, and there you are, still depressed from your past weekend, the previous weekend. And your friends call you up, hey, coming out tonight? And what do you say? No, I'm going to stop all desire. Your friends would think you're mad. Hey, get real. Come on out with us. We'll hook you up with someone. Have another drink. Come on. Stopping desire? Krishna agrees. It is not possible to stop desire. What is the solution then? We must learn how to have purified desire. And that's what Bhakti Yoga is all about. How to desire in perfection. That's not as difficult as it sounds. It just requires a different lifestyle. So if we truly want to unlock happiness, we need a different lifestyle, which brings us a different experience. You see, there is knowledge, and then the application of knowledge, and then experience. Change your knowledge, which will change your lifestyle, which will change your experience. So these days of crisis are a great time to evaluate your lifestyle and take it to another level. That is my plea. Don't be depressed. Yes, we should lower our expectations materially, but increase our spiritual expectations. Yes, we're going to need to live more simply, but that simple living doesn't mean that we should be depressed. No, simple living is the setting for the jewel of the spiritual lifestyle. So we've got a lot that we can accomplish by the grace of crises. The crises are motivating us. You've got to lift your game. You've got to go to a higher level. You can't escape the crisis on the same level that the crisis began. So please think about what you can do with your life. You certainly don't want to be trapped in superficial happiness, consumer happiness. So Bhutan had a point that we don't want these superficial happiness indicators that dominated consumer society. They tried for something deeper. And we give them credit for doing a national social survey that asks questions like, do you talk with your family members? Do you meditate? Okay, nice. But we need something more substantial because, as I often explain, actually everyone's meditating on something. The question is, the object of our meditation, is that non-material? In the case of Bhakti Yoga, it is the object of meditation is beyond even non-material. It's the ultimate source of attractiveness, Krishna. Unless we are in touch, unless we are connected to that ultimate source, that source of infinite attractiveness, we're like a hand amputated from the body. No matter how many rings you put on this hand, no matter how many decorations you may put on this hand, if it's cut off from the body, it's useless. So this is why the Bhakti Yoga texts say that what's the point of decorations on a dead body? What are we connected to? So one last point, and this is kind of an advanced point, and I know there are many of you who are wanting to go deeper with your bhakti practice. This is a point that I had to think about for a few years. In other words, in order for me to accept the full impact, it took a while. We are too tiny to produce happiness on our own. It's a tough one to swallow, right? Because all our social programming, all our conditioning over many lifetimes is pushing us to act on the notion that I can generate happiness. I am the enjoyer. And the Bhakti Yoga texts give you the surprising conclusion of spiritual science. You cannot generate happiness on your own. You cannot be the enjoyer. You must connect to the ultimate source of attractiveness and happiness. Just like the hand must connect to the body in order to function properly. So this is the way to peace. I'm tiny, realizing that. I'm a tiny particle of spiritual consciousness. And without connection to that supreme consciousness, without connection to Krishna, I can't get it together, no matter how hard I try. Just think if you were a 4-year-old kid telling your parent or parents that, okay, I'm going to make myself happy. I've got plans. I've got things to do. Your parents would laugh like you're just a little kid. You're dependent. You're connected to your family, to your parents. Your well-being at that age is dependent on us. Similarly, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Mamayavamsho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. You are all my eternal fragmented parts. You're dependent on me. So this is the real expressway to peace, understanding our spiritual dependency. But you see, in material life, you don't want to be dependent. It's considered a liability to be dependent. But that is the spiritual reality, that we are dependent for happiness and fulfillment on Krishna, on that ultimate source. And as long as we think, I'm this body, I'm the mind, I am this material designation, that material designation, we disrupt our own natural happiness. So again, the crises of the day, and we've got a long laundry list of them, unfortunately. The pandemic. Okay, you say, hey, Swami, you're down there in New Zealand. They've got no COVID. I say, yeah, but they got earthquakes. Just 3 weeks ago, my house that I was staying at, it was shaking. All right, and one way or another, material existence is worrisome. So the intelligent person thinks, how do I solve the whole package problem of material existence? Sounds ambitious, but it's possible, step by step. So I encourage you, let's go deeper into the bhakti yoga practice for the benefit of ourselves and for the whole world. What Krishna is teaching is truly sustainable happiness. Happiness that will not exploit other human beings, other species. It won't exploit the environment, and it won't exploit future generations, intergenerational tyranny. It won't do that. So I think we'll draw to a close there. And it's very enlivening seeing all the faces. It helped me to speak to you all. So I hope I've added something to your spiritual journey during these troubled times. But again, let's use the crises to go deeper. And in that way, we can truly be of benefit to all living entities. Any questions? How do I answer the questions?
Thank you so much.
Damodar.
Yes, sorry, Krishna. So we have a few different reflections and comments here in the section. So I'll read those off and see if you have anything to expand upon from those comments and reflections. And then in the meantime, if any of you have any more comments or anything to broaden or deepen the discussion, or if you just want to reflect, just like a mirror, and just anything that stood out to you, one thing that stood out to you, you can type that into the chat box. Also, if you're joining on YouTube, then you can also type that into the comments. I have it right here, so I can check that as well. But Maharaj, first we have Abraham, and he commented that he said, it seems the key factor to happiness is lasting connections. Do connections with material or industrial things give lasting peace? Or is the problem with these that they do not last forever?
Yes. Connectivity on the material platform is something. As I was addressing the Philadelphia audience a few weeks ago, I pointed out Band-Aid solutions have some value. Usually we say the term Band-Aid solution in a derogatory way. Hey, that's not getting to the root of the problem. It's just a Band-Aid solution. But if I've got a cut, I'd appreciate if someone would offer me a Band-Aid to put on it. The Band-Aid does accomplish something, but it's not much, especially when cuts start appearing all over my body and I'm just putting a Band-Aid here, a Band-Aid there. You say, wait a minute, you've got some underlying problems. Cuts are appearing everywhere in your body. You better go to a doctor who can give you a holistic understanding. So many of you know about holistic health, naturopathy. It purports to deal with the whole person solution. Conventional Western medicine is known for just brilliantly solving superficial or symptoms. But naturopathy aspires to deal with the whole person. So you go to a naturopath and you'll be asked, do you exercise? Are you undergoing a lot of stress? What's your diet? How are your family relationships? So connectivity on the material plane is important, but to get to the root of your problems, you need to expand your field of connectivity to a higher level. So that is what bhakti is about. Yes, take care of your physical, mental needs, but your most important connectivity is with that ultimate source, because you are a part. This is Krishna's insistence in Bhagavad Gita. You're mine. You are my tiny part. Let us exchange in a relationship, the love supreme. That is Bhagavad Gita. Yes, Damodar.
Thank you so much. John typed in the chat box, as a musician and as an athlete, I always think of how competition can be used in a hurtful or helpful way, either to frustrate. So I think this was going off of talking about material desires frustrating, either to frustrate/envy or to push human limits and overcome perceived obstacles. And then Kyle responded to that and said, this is where the higher way of living comes in.
How to use competition in a beneficial way? Is that the point, Damodar?
I believe so. Yes, John is giving a thumbs up.
Okay. Competition that benefits doesn't involve pushing someone down as you go up. Beneficial competition in spiritual life goes like this. And this is something explained by my spiritual preceptor, my spiritual guide, Srila Prabhupada. When you see a bhakti yogi who's evidently doing wonderful service for Krishna and has really made phenomenal spiritual advancement, you don't try to minimize that person in your mind, or even worse, by your words or deeds. You think, oh, in spiritual competition, you're thinking, oh, you're doing so wonderfully. You're inspiring me to do better. Not that you're doing so wonderfully. How can I drag you down? At least in my mind. Otherwise, talk to someone else. He's really not that good. I don't know. So competition in spiritual life can be very helpful. It's not a zero-sum game. I win, you lose. Competition in spiritual life is beneficial all around if it's spiritual competition. Thank you for what you've done. You're doing better. I'm inspired to do better because of your example. So I'm grateful to you. Let me see how I can improve. That's spiritual competition. Material competition, zero-sum game. And many of you are shrewd enough to understand that in the quest for material happiness, someone is always shortchanged. That's the way the material game is rigged. What you get, someone else has lost. You get more money, someone else has less money. You get the attractive, juicy partner, someone else missed out. I'm sure some of you have wondered, why must it be like that? You win the race, someone else is losing. So we want to go above that to the level of spiritual competition. Very good question.
Thank you, Maharaj. And then John responded and said, yes, so that way everybody wins. And then I have two reflections that tie into a question. So I'll read the two reflections and then the question. AJ Madhu said, he was reflecting back what you said, that we can't exploit peacefully no matter how we try or how careful we are. And then, oh yeah, so he was reflecting what Hugo said. That was actually what Hugo said earlier. AJ was appreciating that. And then Kate Lee writes, how might we go about translating this philosophy of peace and happiness beyond our own personal wisdom and into a transformed, peaceful world, given the power structures, capitalism, exploitation that plague our world today? It's great that there are beautiful communities of people who understand and live out all of this, but how do we concretely take this out into the world?
Excellent question. And this was my number one reason for delaying my bhakti yoga practice upon graduating from university. I read the books of Srila Prabhupada for 4 hours a day for 6 months straight and never would attend a single bhakti gathering at any temple, center, what have you. And of course, there was no online back then. I thought these books are extraordinary. I've had the best material education in the world, but I've never seen anything like these books. But I don't know about those devotees. They seem kind of otherworldly. You know, this world has got problems, economic, political. There's one famous statement by a German Jewish philosopher. There is no right life within the wrong life. In other words, your individual attempts to be ethical can not truly be successful if you're living within a structure that is exploitative. In other words, don't pride yourself in being ethical and correct when you're embedded within a structure that's wrong. This is the view of a famous view of one philosopher. So I was thinking like that. And in fact, later I found out that my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, was also thinking like that during the early part of the 20th century when India was a British colony. He was a member of the independence movement, and yet he was also a full spiritualist, a full bhakti yogi by family upbringing. So his friend invited him to come see an extraordinary sadhu, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Our Srila Prabhupada was hesitant. I've seen so many of these sadhus, they're fakes. What can they do for the world? But his friend dragged him. And the first thing that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur told our Srila Prabhupada is that bhakti is so important, it can't wait for anything. Whether independence or political sovereignty, it cannot wait. He explained, regimes come, regimes go. In other words, the ins become the outs, and the outs become the ins. This parade goes on and on. But bhakti can't wait for anything. So I was thinking like this. And so for 6 months, I never went to any bhakti gathering. Because I was thinking, well, what's this going to do for the world? As if I were doing something big for the world. But, the false ego was thinking like that. I started coming to bhakti gatherings when I started to realize that be the change you want to see in others. You want to change the world, first you be that change, and then you can affect so many others. My last month at Yale, my academic advisor told me something which turned out to be prophetic, but not in the way he expected. I went to see him right before I graduated, and I said, well, there I was, looking like a typical well-off young person of the time. This is 1972. I had my shirt with fringe coming off the sleeves. I had the bell-bottom pants. I had the Jimi Hendrix hairstyle. So I just sat down in front of him and said, looking at materialistic society, I don't see a place for myself in it at all. He didn't blink an eye. He just looked at me and said, you are a Yale man. You will influence the world. Maybe he was right, but not in the way he anticipated. So we should be concerned how bhakti can affect the world. Wanting to change the world means honesty. What about my pollutions, my illusions, my contaminations, which force me in the name of the quest for happiness to cause problems for others? Finally, by our attempt to reconnect everything with Krishna, we're dealing with problems on the highest level, meaning we're dealing with problems that can only be solved at the highest level. And indeed, by our bhakti endeavors, we're bringing about the renaissance of that highest level solution, the ultimate connection. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. I have one comment and then another question. The comment is from Tejas, and he just wanted to express his gratitude to everyone involved on the Zoom call, as well as whoever is joining on YouTube as well. And I also wanted to express my gratitude for everyone online as well. And then the question from Keith Chrisman, which is, I often feel like a kindergartner and identify with the body, or call that chronic neuromuscular tension, quote, self. Does identification with the atomic supersoul change the point of awareness, or is it a process of constantly reminding ourselves? Essentially, how do we go beyond identifying with the body? So it sounds like he's asking something to the effect of, how do we see ourselves even beyond these neuromuscular impulses and see ourselves as consciousness as something different from that?
Yes, the first step is to understand that you're the non-material particle of consciousness, You're part of the supreme consciousness. That's just the beginning, though. We're not into just theoretical spiritual understanding. Although it has value, it gets your foot in the door. It's the first grade in school. But we want to move into action. And Bhagavad Gita will teach you about the spirit soul in spiritual activities. And that's what the whole bhakti lifestyle is all about. Connection, how to act as spirit soul, even within the material world. Those of you with a Christian background, like I had, may remember an instruction Jesus is said to have given in the New Testament. You should be in the world, but not of the world. This is high spiritual technology. The full meaning of that is given in Bhagavad Gita. How to act as spirit soul, even within the material body and mind. You do that by dedicating all your activities for Krishna's pleasure. Then, in spite of being embedded in a material body and mind, you're no longer on the material platform. You're using the material body and mind for the pleasure of the source of all energy. And that energy includes the material body and mind. So this is how the bhakti lifestyle is truly holistic. It's about functioning in complete connectivity to the supreme source, to Krishna. How can you be holistic, the buzzword, unless you know something about the complete whole? You tell me.
All right. If anyone has any final comments, reflections, or questions, please feel free to type them into the chat box here. Otherwise, I wanted to sincerely thank Maharaj so much for sharing your wisdom here today. If everyone can give a wave to Maharaj. And then, thank you. And then before we sign off, anyone who would like to sign up to hear more about upcoming programs, and or if you're interested in joining one of our book clubs, which is a great way to get connected and meet online other like-minded individuals interested in expanding consciousness, we encourage you all to shoot us an email at, and I typed it into the chat box here, which is truth.matters.chicago@gmail.com. So you can send us an email if you want to find out more upcoming events like this. Again, we're going to be doing these on a recurring monthly basis. And I think this was an absolutely incredible start off to our new program. And we have a couple more people expressing their gratitude for your sharing your talk today, Maharaj. So I want to thank you so much.
I thank you all. It's been a great opportunity. It's been enlivening. I've looked at as many of the faces, the participants, and it's great to see such a group. And this is the real hope for the future of the world. Thank you, Damodar.
Thank you so much, guys. All right. Truth Matters signing off. See you guys next